waiting for that. I believe we're up and running. James Cook, Traverse City Record Eagle, senior sports writer. You and all the books. You're taking the prime seat today in our Up North Live digital studio, broadcasting live over Facebook, I believe over Twitter, over YouTube. We've got all the social media platforms covered. Well, maybe Twitter's called X now. I still haven't gotten that all figured out. Hopefully somebody will and let me know. James, you're here because football talk is still pretty fresh. We've had a week of games to assess, but there's still a long ways to go in this high school football regular season. But let's start with week one. You and I both went to the same games, actually, on the same nights. Yeah, so we have a lot in common to talk about there. But you're great. You're knowledgeable for all encompassing Northern Michigan. Give me your biggest takeaway from week one of the high school football season.
I mean, I think it was from that St. Francis Charlevoix game. You know, a lot of people, I think ourselves kind of included, thought that St. Francis was going to be down this season and maybe being kind of a rebuild, being that they lost 11 starters on offense and 8 on defense. So, and in that game, they showed that's not the case. Pulling out a 41-40 win in overtime against a very good Charlevoix team that gave them a really good run for their money.
Yeah, that was an amazing game, and I'm kind of hoping our week 2 game of the week goes that way. We'll get to that in just a little bit, but another game that you and I were at that we're also going to talk about when we talk about week 2, the debut of the Manistee Mariners. Pretty impressive start to their season, their new team name, and they're another great Northern Michigan football team that I think is going to have a lot more eyeballs on them this year.
Yeah, they're one of a couple teams with pretty slick new logos this season, new mascot to go with it. The Mariners logo is pretty cool, I think, but the football team looks maybe even better. 45-0 against Kalkaska. Their offense looked very potent. They've got a transfer from Texas in at linebacker who is just a one-man wrecking crew. At least he was in that game in the first half when he played. He had 2 sacks and 2 tackles for losses. He was a guy who, when he was playing for high school in Texas last year, was sitting behind a Division I recruit to USC for a lot of the season, but really was able to showcase what he can do at Manistee this season.
That's right. A couple great starts for those few teams. And just before we get into week 2 for high school football, James, any other I haven't listened to the podcast yet this week that you guys do with the Get Around podcast for the Record Eagle, but any other noteworthy prep sports info to pass along to our viewers right now, stuff that stood out to you here in the first few weeks of the fall sports season?
Well, one of our kid that was the Hall of Fame nominee this week, or the Hall of Fame entrant this week, was Mitchell Harrington from Grayling. He scored 10 goals in one day for Grayling, and I believe it was in a tournament. So it might have been, I think it was over more than one game, but still 10 goals is a heck of a thing. And he had a hat trick in a different game in the week as well. So 13 goals over the course of a week is heck of an accomplishment there.
Yeah, Grayling soccer. I think you said you're going to Elk Rapids tonight. I think I'm going to go to the Leland game tonight, but maybe Grayling should be getting some more of the coverage this fall based on that start for that individual, much less the team. So very cool stat there. Well, yeah, let's transition to week 2 because, as most people know, week 2 actually gets started on Thursday here with the upcoming Labor Day holiday weekend. So a majority of the games, in fact, I got a little cheat sheet for anybody who sees it at home. You can see a bunch of games on Thursday, just a few on Friday. So that's kind of the lay of the land here for week 2 of high school football. Everything kind of shifts to the Thursday. It makes sense. Give everybody one more bonus long holiday weekend. I know some schools are already in session. But a lot of them then will get started right after. I know my sister and her kids are coming up from the Detroit area this weekend for one final summer soiree. But before we get to all that, before I house a bunch of crazy nieces at my place, we're going to dive into the meat of that week 2 schedule. And there's no doubt in my mind what is the game of the week for week 2. I assume you guys are circling it as well. That would be Gaylord visiting Kingsley. Both teams coming off some nice wins in week 1. Kingsley looked really impressive on the road at Reed City, while Gaylord getting by TC West at home. James, assess the matchup for us. Blue Devils, Stags. I know Kingsley's got one of the toughest schedules I've heard in all of Division 6 across the state, and no more proof than Reed City and then Gaylord back-to-back to start.
Yeah, Kingsley, I don't know if you follow the website Goose Poop, but they do all kinds of stats and everything for high school football, and they ranked Kingsley as having the most difficult schedule in all of Division 6, and by a lot. It wasn't even kind of close. In Division 7, I think St. Francis has one of the toughest schedules as well. So even though they weren't quite sure what they were going to be this season, they still scheduled a pretty tough schedule. But Kingsley, coming off an impressive win, like you said, at Reed City. Reed City was a team that was excellent last season, and they just wiped them off the map, 46-12. That was a score that I didn't expect. I expected Reed City to be able to play a little bit more with Kingsley. So for that game to be that big of a blowout says something for Kingsley and what they're doing this season. Gaylord getting by TC West, who's I think an improved team in a game where that coach really wanted to win that game because he's playing against his former school. James Wagner, Gaylord had coached in Gaylord before, so playing his former team. So Gaylord pulling that win out and getting 3 field goals, I think it was, by Connor Byram. So, I mean, they've got a pretty good kicking game there, too. Gaylord won this game last year 17-16 on a late field goal by Byram as well in Gaylord, but this year it's in Kingsley.
So you think there might be a Byram factor is what you're saying?
There could be. You don't have a lot of teams that have like really good field goal kickers that they're confident in trotting out for field goals, but Byram is one of those ones that Gaylord is very confident in, and from a decent range as well. These aren't just extra points type field goals. And last year was the first ever meeting between these two teams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you can't draw it up any better for week 2. A lot of schools are still not quite in conference play yet, and these are 2 of the better programs, it appears, this season in our area, and they're going to test themselves. Only one of them can be 2-0. We'll find out. Another similar matchup between 2 1-0 teams is an old school Northwest Conference rivalry that we're reuniting here in the Northern Michigan Football Conference Legacy Division. For those of you who know the Northern Michigan Football Conference as well as James and I, you always got to remember which L is which team and which division and which layer. I believe Glen Lake and Frankfort are the Legacy Division, and they're going at it on Friday night in Leelanau County. And I remember going to a game of theirs 2 years ago, I think the last time Glen Lake hosted, and that was a shootout to the end, and that was a lot of fun. So we know these two really want to beat each other, and another great litmus test for both of them here in week 2.
Yeah, both coming off of wins and wins by a few scores. Glen Lake was a little closer than the score indicates. Manton, I think that game was tied or had a slight lead at one point in the fourth quarter, but for a couple of fumbles. Really turned the tide for Glen Lake, and they were able to pull that one out, win by 16 points, 34-18. Frankfort coming off a 38-8 win over Mansalona in the first week. And last year, Frankfort won this game 22-6 in Frankfort. That was part of a 6-game winning streak that Frankfort had to close out the regular season. But and Frankfort has a 42-20 all-time lead in this series.
That actually surprises me a little bit. I figured it'd be a little I know Frankfort may be the more historically strong program, but we know Glen Lake is no slouch to the history of football.
Yeah, I think Glen Lake. I think if you look at more recent years, I think it's a lot more even. But I think back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, I think Frankfort dominated the series a little bit more.
Yeah, my 60s, 70s, 80s football memory gets a little fuzzy. I don't know why. Could have something to do with the fact that I was born for only 3 of those years, but be that as it may, Michigan-football.com is a great resource. We're going to shout out random websites for Michigan high school football information. Michigan-football.com, a great source to get all of your results for any high school football program from 1950 up to now. So I'd recommend visiting that if you want to study up on those statistics. It may or may not help me with my game notes on Friday a bit. All right, we got one more to go, and we'd already talked about the Manistee Mariners, kind of feeling like the Seattle Mariners down there. And they're going up against a team right down the road from them in Mason County Central. Both of these teams are 1-0 as well, and going to give each other a nice test here in week 2 to see who can really enter September with a lot of momentum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I said, Manistee coming off that 45-0 win against Kalkaska. That was just a pretty convincing win overall. Mason County Central beat Godwin Heights 27-7 to win their opening season game. Manistee does hold a slight advantage in this all-time series, but it's only 11-7. But they did win last year 26-7 They're 27-6. And this is also Manistee's first responders night, where people who are first responders, I think, get in for free. They're going to have all kinds of other kind of celebrations, kind of like a mini Patriot game type atmosphere.
That's cool. Yeah, and with Mason County Central being right down the road, that's a great way to tie the community in. Those schools are so close together. So, yeah, another good matchup there on Friday night down on the southern Lake Michigan end of our viewing area. James, if you don't mind, I know I'm putting you on the spot. We are on Facebook Live after all, but just give you a couple quick hit reactions to some of these other games that are coming up this week. Let's start with Johannesburg, Lewiston, and East Jordan. Both those teams are 1-0 as well.
Yeah, Joburg, they're coming off a tough couple of seasons here, and get that win to open the season last year, or this season was big for them. East Jordan coming off a pretty competitive season last year where they had that upset win over Frankfurt in the playoffs on the road. They keep looking to keep that momentum going this season into the Northern Michigan Football Conference.
And that's another legacy division matchup. They're in the same division as Glen Lake and Frankfurt, so intriguing to see both those matchups.
Yeah. We think
pretty sure it's the legacy. My cheat sheet.
I have to look it up every time.
I don't want to put them on blast, but even the coaches don't know. I will sit there and do interviews. I'm like, so the legacy division title, is that what our division is called? Like, according to all the websites, yes. But yes, that is where we're at with the legacy.
The coaches that I talked to, they just refer to it as the big, medium, and small divisions.
I heard down south they go by colors in the Grand Rapids area, the OK red, the OK blue, but the Saginaw Valley, the division or the conference that has TC Central and TC West now. You're going to get to TC West in a second, but Grayling and Ogama Heights. Interesting to see hear your thoughts. We talked about Viking soccer earlier, about Grayling football coming off a 1-0 start.
Yeah, they're coming off a win too, which is and they're like Joburg. They're coming off a tough season last year. I think they were 2-7, which is uncharacteristic for Grayling football in recent years. So they're looking to get back better quarterbacks in the league coming back, and Ethan Kuharek. So that helps a lot coming into that season with a senior quarterback like that who's got a couple years of starting experience under his belt that can really lead that offense and dependably get you some scores every game.
Well, and we touched on TC West coming up short against Gaylord a week ago. Big rivalry meeting for them for the Coast Guard Cup at Thurlby Field. TC West, Grand Haven, Thursday night. Titans bounce back. Is this one? I mean, that's a pretty cool trophy they have. It's the little Coast Guard buoy thing, I believe, right? I mean, that's a pretty fun thing to play for. Not like the most iconic trophy case trophy, but a kind of neat little setup item that is on display there, and the winning team gets to take home. What are your impressions of West? They're gonna be able to bounce back and take on Grand Haven this Thursday?
I think West will bounce back. They had a pretty competitive game against Gaylord. So, I don't think they have anything to be hanging their heads about. And Gaylord's a very, very good team as well. So I think this will be a bounce back game, and that is a pretty cool traveling trophy, the one that you get there for the Coast Guard Cup.
Right, everybody has just a normal fancy trophy you get from the trophy store. It's not every day you just take a used buoy that nobody wants anymore and recycle that for high school football rivalry purposes. But no, this Grand Haven TC West series, it was a great idea by both schools to set up, I believe, almost like 10 years ago now. I want to say we're getting pretty close to a 10-year. Traverse City was named the Coast Guard City, early 2010s, I want to say?
Something like that, yeah.
So, I think it's close. Check those bonus websites James and I just shielded for you if you really want more information. I'm sure you're the one with the duck feces. That one definitely has what you're looking for. Anybody who's just joining the stream right now is like, what did I just sign up for? What are you talking about, Harrison? James, thank you so much for giving us a few minutes assessing week 1 and week 2 for high school football. The only 2 weeks of the year where we get games, a lot of games stretched out over 2 nights. That's how big a deal it is because, of course, week 3, once all the schools are in session, we will shift to that normal base Friday night for all your newspaper coverage of the Traverse City Record Eagle. You, James, and Jordan all do a great job, and hopefully folks who can't wait for the newspaper articles to come out yet, they tune in to Hometown Highlights every Friday night for us as well because the season is here. It's back. We're ready. And we're so thankful that we have great friends in the media that help us assess the game. So I appreciate you coming on, my friend.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you all for watching from home. We'll get you more sports content here from our UpNorthLive digital studios throughout the school year. So be sure to join us then.